my fault. And we are recording with the sexiest grandmother in the world, Miss Mitzi Perdue.
And Tommy, I love you so much.
Episode 595, 100 episodes since I had on the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, which led me down a road of permanent banhood. So I'll celebrate that. I'll cheers my water to that. 100 episodes since YouTube threw me in the gulag. But Miss Mitzi Perdue, for all the new listeners, please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Mitzi Perdue. I'm a huge fan of Tommy Carrigan. I met him because of being a guest on his show, but here's something, an insider for you, Mr. or Ms. Member of the audience. I just recently sent an email to a guy named Michael Schellenberger, who will be a great guest, and I think he's going to agree to be on, saying that people who've been guests on Tommy Carrigan's often end up his friends. And I'm an example. I didn't know Tommy. I was a guest on his show, or this show. And darned if I wouldn't call you a pretty good friend now.
Well, thank you,
in
Mitzi.
fact, as an 80-year-old who's proud of it, I've become your grandmother.
You have. And perhaps this will be held against me in the future when within 2 minutes I've admitted you're my grandmother and also said you're a sexy grandmother. So
no, it doesn't get back. First of all, I'm proud as can be of being a grandmother. I've got 4 grandkids and they're the light of my life.
Yes.
Well, I guess having 4 grandchildren is the nicest, but being sexy or being referred to as sexy, boy, that's a close second.
Anyone who's saying they don't like being complimented is lying through their teeth. That's just the truth. It's what I was going to say is, that is, you did. And Michael Schellenberger, who was just on Joe Rogan, I've had on Howard Bloom, who is on Joe Rogan. And next week I'm having on an author who has also been on Joe Rogan. And Schellenberger is going to come on towards the end of November. So by Christmas time or by December, I will have racked up 3 Joe Rogan guests. So
all right. And I told Michael Schellenberg when saying, you've just got to accept being on Tommy Carrigan's podcast. I said, in my humble but experienced opinion, that Tommy, this is what I wrote to Michael Schellenberger about you, Tommy. I said that I thought that you were at least as good as Joe Rogan. You had guests who were as interesting, and that your ability to draw interesting, just facts out of the blue, I don't know where you get them, would make it for your guests so interesting that he'll want to be back. That's what I said.
I hope so. I know, and I appreciate that. And as you said, yes, there's an unspoken social contract that I also pester the guests till they become my friends. It's very infrequently do I not regularly speak with a guest. I suck them all in.
It's shocking. I bet that, again, Joe Rogan, whom I adore.
Oh yeah, I love him.
But I wonder how many of his guests end up being his friends.
Yeah,
probably some.
Yeah, probably some. Yeah, did you? Well, I don't want to get too off topic, but did you by any chance see any of the clips of him interviewing Sanjay Gupta?
Yes, but in a very superficial way, I'm aware that they didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah, and there's like a 5-minute video of Rogan. It's almost hard to watch because he's just grilling him. Sanjay tries to change the topic and he's like, no, let's go back. Why did the company you work for lie? He's like, I don't know. He's like, what do you mean? You're the head medical guy there. And he's like, fine, Joe, I get it. Ivermectin can be used in humans. And Rogan's like, not can be, often is. Billions of doses, 2015 Nobel Peace Prize. Why are you guys and you can just, and then he goes, it really bothered you that they lied. And Joe goes, it should bother you. And it's just, you watch and it's just like, oh Lord, like even the body language, Sanjay is kind of looking all around. And you just see Rogan just like, he just looks like a brick of muscle just staring at him. And it's wonderful, but that's not the topic of this podcast.
I love it. I love it.
It's because, so good.
Okay, let's stay off topic for a few seconds longer.
Right. I got nothing to do. Let's do it.
All right. I love the fact that, as I understand it, that it was brought up that India gives just about everybody ivermectin, and they've just about conquered the whole problem. while
Mhm.
we, with all our expensive medications, uh, are nowhere near doing as well as India. I mean, what? I mean, that seems to me lawsuit material.
Well, India's largest state, I can't remember the name of it,
They're
has
predators or something. Because I did hear that.
yeah, 246 million person
Yep.
population.
Yep.
Comparable to the US is 350, but they eradicated 0 new cases a day. And well, the big thing that I think everyone is slowly real, and as I've been saying for months, I was like, the truth will come out, and now it's got to Rogan. It's everyone starting to realize what it really is. And it's if there is other treatment, off label or off the shelf treatment, that voids the EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization Act, which allows these to be used. Moderna has doubled in market cap. Pfizer has posted, I think, 4 or 6 straight quarters of record breaking profit, each one breaking the previous record.
And I'm under the impression that we're talking billions and billions of dollars. So, I mean, people will kill
Profit
each other for $10. What are they going to do to get billions and billions? And
profit, not revenue, profit. And it's, well, you know that human trafficking. What will people do for money? To me, this is when people are like, do you really think they're doing that? Yes, 100%. I think that's what the cause of 700,000 Americans. Yes. And I think they would do 700,000 more. They had the problem, I think, with a lot of us is we look at them, us liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, we look at them, but we're looking at them through our eyes. And if I may, us being good people, respectful, the guys I have Roger on every week. Roger's super liberal. I'm super conservative. But even we know we have different opinions, but we love our families, we love our societies, we all want the same thing, a safe place, a good source of income, freedoms, just we don't see eye to eye on everything, but the core values are the same. I think the problem is we all look at these and we project our own values onto them, and we go, sure, we're all, I'm making a podcast, I'm after money, I'm going to make money on this thing, I don't make any bones about it. But if someone said, well, what if you killed Joe Rogan? I would say no, because that's where I come from. But I think what none of us are considering is the people at the very, and this isn't some communist anti-corporation rant. I love corporations. I think they're great. But if you just look at the history of big pharma, and I know I interviewed Gerald Posner, New York Times bestselling author and author of Pharma, all about the Sackler family and their Perdue family, not your Perdue family, the other Perdue family.
Please point out that it's a different Perdue.
I have to point that out. Not the chicken family, the opioid family. I mean, that was just in 2009 that Pfizer had to pay out $3.2 billion. That was just 12 years ago. We don't even need to go back to, what was it, thalidomide in the 60s with the flipper babies. We know that this is happening. I think the problem is we look at these CEOs of these big companies that in the past have proven that they will do horrible things, even just 12 years in the past. And we project ourselves onto them and we go, well, I couldn't do that. So it's, I get being ruthless. Sure, business is cutthroat, but I wouldn't do that. The problem is we, and that means every guest, every audience member I have, 99.9999% of you are like, we all have the basic core human values where it's like, we wouldn't do that. I wouldn't kill 700,000 people. You can't project yourself onto Hitler or Goring or Himmler and go, I get,
or a human trafficker.
exactly. They don't play by the same rules as you.
Okay, I want to get philosophical on
Let's go.
And this is quoting Plato. Plato said, it's as hard for a good man to think ill of a bad man as it is for a bad man to think good of a good man. In other words, if you're basically bad, you just can't process that they're good people. But the flip side of that is good people have extreme difficulty imagining that there are people who are motivated by causing pain and suffering.
I had
we can't process it.
The last like landlord I had in college was this black guy named Donnell, and I love Donnell, super sassy black guy. And I remember like, I was like, you don't think she's hot? Like, that girl's beautiful. You don't even think a little bit? And I remember he asked me, he was like, do you think the quarterback of like the football team is hot? And I was like, no. And he goes, as much as you can understand why I think that guy is a stud, you have to know that I can't look at that girl who you're drooling over and think, he goes, and I feel nothing. It's kind of this, you go, oh, I'm like, so you don't think she goes, I feel nothing. And then he points at Brad Pitt and I go, he's a good actor. And he's like, I'm hot under the collar looking at him. And I'm like, I feel nothing. He goes, you have to understand that you can't understand, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are looking at them going, they wouldn't actually suppress ivermectin during a pandemic, would they?
No,
They're
they
not
couldn't.
the
It's true.
same. They've got the little horns pricking out. Th- this is nothing to them. They're probably mad that they can only do it this far. But I don't know. It's evil. And you know what? I think it's going to come out eventually. I mean, getting banned from YouTube for it, I think something is gonna come out. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's coming, it's the pieces are starting to fall into place where you can't ignore it. You go, really, social media is they're only banning things about this. You're telling me that consolidated power group, only 5 CEOs of what Facebook, Insta, same thing, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, and what Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit. I'm renaming them now. You're telling me that it's hard to just get in touch with a couple of them and go, hey, why don't you squash these stories? We keep this EUA thing going, and maybe you guys get, I don't know, some stock options. They know how to do it. They're not stupid people. You know how to do it through proxies and different faces, plausible deniability. We know this happens.
Well,
Why wouldn't they squash it?
all right. Case example of the ability to squash information. The Wuhan virus. I thought it was willful blindness not simply to recognize that an institute of virology that specializes in studying bat coronaviruses. I mean,
In
willful
Wuhan,
blindness to even entertain the idea that it didn't come from the Institute of Virology that was studying bat viruses with gain of function and military component. I mean, tell me that it wasn't willful blindness just to not say right from the beginning the most obvious thing in the world. And yet, how many people were banned from YouTube or Amazon or anything for recognizing the most
yeah,
obvious thing in the world? And then a year and a half later, then suddenly, for reasons which are not clear to me, suddenly it becomes okay to say, oh yeah, of course it came from there.
yeah. So who are these gatekeepers? Who are the ones
And and and,
saying,
uh, and what made them change their mind that now it's okay?
you gotta imagine, or it feels like there's something going on beneath the surface. Like, there's the one thing I always look at is Operation Paperclip by Annie Jacobson. She talks about, I think it's called Operation Alsace, which was like the predecessor to Paperclip, which is where we brought back all the Nazi scientists to build rockets so the Soviets couldn't have better rockets. But you can see in like the final months of the war, although the monolithic face of the Nazi facade was, okay, they're losing ground, but they're steadfast and we're going to fight till the end. What we now know, I mean, it's been what, 76 years. We can now go back and look. There were the top scientists, the top generals, the top right hand men of Hitler. They were all taking like blueprints of certain things, a V2, a V1, a V3, artillery, this, stealth, jet engines. They were all taking their own little nugget that they could find. And they were putting them in crates and having them buried. They all had these huge estates. They would have them buried. They all sought, despite coming to work every day and Sieg Heil, and we are going to fight. It's not looking good now, but the German people will win. They were all at the same time putting stuff away here and there because they knew the end was coming, and they knew. They went back after I'm reading right now, Masters of Death, about the Einsatz group and the mobile death squads that preceded the concentration camps, where after the German forces would invade, the Einsatz group and would sort of come in afterwards, and they would go through and find all the Jews and they bring them out of the woods and they'd shoot them all in the back. But they had a name for it, where they'd shoot them in the back of the neck and then they would bury them in these pits. And they realized after a while, they're like, hey, why don't we just build camps? We could do this much more efficiently. And that's what gave birth to the concentration camps. But even in like 43, some of the guys that were in charge of that, they started to, put their finger in the air and go, we might lose this war. They went back, and although Hitler didn't know it and no one else in the world did, they started digging up all the bodies and burning them. They were like, we got to get rid of the evidence. So as much as it seemed like a monolith up until Hitler shot himself, the top guys were all putting pieces because they knew that these blueprints for rockets, this was their bargaining chip. They knew that, hey, we got to get rid of those bodies because that's war crime. They all started to see the signs up to 24 months beforehand that it was over. But no one knew that. It's not until decades later that can we piece it together. I'm saying all of that to say there's, that's got to be happening if people are going, all right, so we suppressed ivermectin, which cost 700,000 US deaths. There's only 420,000 US deaths during World War II. So we're looking at 2 World War IIs of deaths, and we're responsible for it. They're deleting emails. They're taking, or not only that, they're probably recording emails, putting them on a hard drive and burying it on their property and going, that's my, I'll use that for immunity. I'll play ball if you play ball. The monolith only seems impenetrable up until it falls. And then in hindsight, in 50 years, we're probably going to learn like, oh yeah, the CEO of Pfizer, they all started making backroom deals as early as, July 2020. And what we're seeing on the surface, like you just said, for some reason, we don't know why, all of a sudden it's okay to talk about it coming from Wuhan. I think that's what we're seeing. It feels chaotic now, but if you look at the past, you can see where this has happened before. And you have to imagine this is probably what it felt like then. Why are these defectors happening? How come these guys are flying to Britain and going, I want a peace deal with you? In hindsight, we go, oh, it was falling apart from within years before Hitler shot himself, and then it was over. That's kind of how I feel.
Let us transition from that into China.
Yes.
Because I want to share with you something that I was a government major in college, and one of the great famous professors said that a mistake that we Americans frequently make is we focus on our weaknesses, but it's very wholesome to look at the weaknesses of the other side. And following that advice, look what's going on in China right now. Let me count the ways. All right, energy shortage. Why the energy shortage? Well, there are many reasons, but I'll tell you one, and I'm pretty sure of it because I've been there. In Shanxi province, which is it's a northern province of China, and it's where the majority of the coal mines are. I've actually been in the coal mines, the underground ones, and I've watched the surface ones. They're having, now I can't swear this is right, I've been told it, so I'm repeating something I've heard, but the floods they're experiencing in the last, I don't know, couple of months are 700-year floods. Something like there are roughly 600 coal mines in that area, and at least 10% of them have been flooded. Now, when you flood a coal mine with 700-year floods, it's probably going to take you a while to drain that coal mine, to pump it out. So it's probably, 10% of their coal mines are probably out for quite a while. Okay, so that's one of their weaknesses, and the add-on effects of that, it seems, are that they're rationing electricity for 20 of the provinces out of 31. And that includes like shutting down cement plants, shutting down aluminum plants, the high energy. Okay, so that's an energy issue. And then on top of that, they ticked off Australia, and they banned Australian coal. And now they want to change that, but Australia is not feeling all warm and fuzzy towards China. So I don't know how that's going to play out, or maybe it's already played out by now. But meanwhile, they're up against a lot of people whose jobs aren't happening because of factories being shut down. Or if they aren't shut down, maybe they operate 2 or 3 days a week instead of like 6 days a week. Then added to that, there's a lot, if the information on YouTube is correct, that there are lots of areas where when electricity is rationed, you got 2 big problems, or at least when energy is tight. And one is, how do you light your apartment? You use candles, but those are pretty expensive. So lighting the candles or being in the dark, or cooking, or how about heat? And Shanxi province is pretty far to the north, and it gets darn cold. And I know there because I know that because I've been there in winter, and I thought I'd die. It was so
Yeah.
cold. Okay, so that's one weakness. It seems that they are having some energy problems. How about Evergrande? Have you followed that?
A little bit, right? It's
All
kind of
right.
like you were saying with Sanjay. Like, I've got a very superficial. It's some huge, like, I don't know, like, is that the right word? Ponzi scheme. Everyone's coming for their money, and it's not there. It's a house of
It's
cards.
I'm my impression. I wouldn't testify this in court, but I will say that it's my impression uh, that it's almost as if the whole country is a Ponzi scheme. And I'll tell you why I think that. Uh, for between 2007 and 2017, I used to visit China fairly regularly for several weeks at a time. And the family that I visited, the patriarch, would take me and 10 of his family members to visit different parts of China. But he liked to go off the beaten track. By the way, he owned coal mines, which is how I happen to know about coal mines. But he also owned steel mills. And I mean, this is quite a neat way to see a country.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
But the trips that he would take me and his families on would be, he was interested in the bottom third economically of China. So wherever we would go, it would be off the tourist beaten path, and it would also be not the rich cities where everybody would go. So I think that I had a fairly, lucky approach to seeing China, seeing it with a Chinese family. And here's where I walked away with, and we're again on the theme of Ponzi schemes, and things can look really robust until they aren't. One of the things, let me first, a little background about myself. I grew up in the hotel industry, and one of the most important things in a hotel family is occupancy rate. You'd really like that occupancy rate to be like 80 or 90%, and below 60%, oh, you're anxious and worried. Okay, that's where I'm coming from when I'm seeing these cities. I'm looking at the cities that that my Chinese friend would take us to, or even the towns or villages. And no matter where we went, there was a staggering number of empty buildings, but they kept building more. It was, I don't know, it was like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where you can't turn the faucet off. There were just, every time every area we visited would see ghost cities, would see ghost highways, we would see ghost stadiums, we would see ghost shopping centers. And I was told by one of the family members who has an interest in this kind of thing, I'm saying, how does this happen? Why do they keep building when they're not being occupied? And he said, here's what's going on. And by the way, this is a different view than you'll hear from American or in the Western press. So I'm prepared for it to be wrong, but I will tell you that a resident of China or a Chinese nationalist told me what I'm about to tell you. He said, if you're a mayor in like a Chinese town, you really want to look good to the people above you, because that's the way to rise up in the party, by having a really good record. And the other side of that is you don't want a really bad record. Well, what's the metric? Jobs that you provide. Well, you engaged in endless construction, and boy, your unemployment issues are just, they've gone away, and you can borrow money cheaply, and the state loves it, and they're not going to stand in the way. And so you build. So I asked my Chinese friend, who, by the way, this is the patriarch's niece, and she happened to be in real estate. Oh my. So I asked her, how long do these buildings fill up? Because we're looking, I've now learned that there are hundreds of millions of empty apartment rooms. Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, no, like for everyone listening, literally, that's not an exaggeration. Stealth War by Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He talks about driving by cities. I think he said his guide pointed out to him that one's bigger than Pittsburgh, and he said, "What's the population?" And he said, zero.
Exactly.
Zero.
Okay, so I've seen this with my own eyes,
Okay.
but again, coming from a hotel background with a great interest of, is this solvent or not? And below 60%, occupancy, you're starting to feel really uneasy. Well, what about when there are whole cities, shopping centers, entertainment areas, sports complexes, or airports even, that are empty? How do you get your money back? So I asked my friend, let's call her Julia, which is not her name.
Okay.
Julia, how long till these buildings fill up? Because there's so many of them. I was going to say effing many of them, but I'm a lady and I wouldn't use that kind of language. At
So
least not publicly.
there's so freaking many of them. So flipping many buildings.
Okay, so flipping many.
So many fantastic buildings.
So many fantastic buildings. And somehow we ought to move that on to Let's Go Brandon. But
let's go Brandon. Fantastic Brandon. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go Chinese empty buildings.
Yeah.
She said that the problem is, there are lots of people who in theory could move into them, but they can't afford them. So I said, well, okay, if they can't afford them, how long can you hold out without any income from investments? And she said, the problem is, if they've been empty 5 years, that this construction is so shoddy that the only answer is to tear them down, because between leaks and I don't know what all else, the electricity gets ruined, the pipes get ruined. And there's something that I've learned since. It's called, I imagine this is some kind of translation, but tofu buildings or tofu construction. And what that means is that instead of like the best quality cement or drywall or anything else, you can just take your fingers and smush them in your fingers like tofu. And that is an expression that was used. So she said, we are looking at buildings that are more than 5 years old. The only thing you can do with them is tear them down. But what about like in the town of Ordos, which is in Inner Mongolia? The Chamber of Commerce admits to 50,000 empty buildings. I can remember driving by on an empty, it seemed like a 12-lane highway with nothing on it but our van, driving by at 60 miles an hour. And it just seemed we never reached the end of all these 38-story, I counted 38-story high empty buildings. So we're on the topic of that you brought up of just before Germany's collapse, or at least leading up to Germany's collapse, that there were all sorts of people who were kind of feathering their nests and creating bargaining chips. And we didn't know until way after that Germany was actually fragile. Well, I'm wondering right now if between the floods and the energy shortage and the buildings that will never pay for themselves before they have to be torn down, and the fact, now this is really basic, of a weakness Ponzi scheme situation, China does not have a social security system. In the past, they didn't really need one all that badly because the idea was that the children and grandchildren would take care of the parents. But right now, there's a generation where it falls on one child to look after parents and grandparents rather than a whole family to look after them. So since there aren't that many places where somebody middle or somebody without a great many means, one of the few things that they can do for their future security is invest in real estate. And again, I don't know that this is true, but I think it's fair to say that a huge percentage of the population of China was hoping that these buildings that they were investing in would be their retirement. That's not going to happen because, well, Evergrande is famous for being on the verge of bankruptcy if it's not there already. But I've heard that there are hundreds of other real estate companies that are in the same situation. And so what happens when the population of a country has their retirement vanish? And again, this is on the subject of, could China be more vulnerable than we're thinking?
I I tend to believe, and I've always been hesitant to, because it, right, you want to prepare for the worst. You don't want to assume, right? It's probably better to prepare. It's probably better to assume Nazi Germany is a monolith, and we need to go in there with the force of God and, pattern like a bulldog who hasn't eaten, and then find out that they were weak. Then, right,
Right.
it's better to go island hopping throughout the Pacific and getting ready with some nuclear bomb, preparing for a mainland invasion, and then, be happy when the A bomb works, but prepare
Yeah.
for the worst. So I've always kind of taken, you hope China is a paper dragon, but you have to prepare. Go, are they actually a dragon? Is their Belt and Road Initiative real? I mean, Spalding says in his book Stealth War, which I think is the best book about China that I've read to date, is they poured more concrete between 2014 and 2016 than the United States did between 1900 and 2016. Which, I mean, you got to think of the
But as far
cities.
as I'm concerned, that's money wasted,
Well,
because the
that's what
buildings have to be torn down.
well,
And by the way, you had a guest, Gordon Chang, whom
mhm.
I absolutely
I mean,
adore.
collapse of China. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has an academic view and vast knowledge. I don't. I just have one tiny thing, but I'm going to cling on to it, and that is what I've seen with my own eyes.
Well, there are two important points to go there. Is everything I said about China, the 2014 and 2016. I look, I, I look at that initially as going, this is a real threat. But now you start to look at it, you go, is this just, I mean, they talk about why they keep building them, and it's because it's just like, as long as like we don't acknowledge that they're empty and we keep building them, it looks great on paper. And I think they said, like, how come they aren't going bankrupt? Because the CCP will, like, the government will absorb all the loans. And they say, right, like a rolling stone gathers no moss. They say a rolling loan gathers no loss. And so that's why they keep this charade going. So on the
Okay,
surface,
but a principle of life, something that can't go on forever, won't. And I'm wondering if the Evergrande bankruptcy is
so
the
that's what I'm getting to, is on the surface, it did look like a real dragon, but now you're starting to look at it more and going, hold on, is this a charade? And I want to pull that back into what you just said, is what did you see with your own eyes, right? I mean, you can go to New York and you can do a whole tourist thing, right? You can go to the Empire State Building and you can go to the Statue of Liberty, which is great. And I did that when I was like 10 or 8. And then I went again in 2012 with some of my friends from college, and we got like a hotel, and we went to a bunch of seedy bars on Times Square and got hammered. I saw two different New Yorks. I saw Postcard New York, and I saw like transsexual prostitute and hooker, saying like, hey, $5 for a good time. And I was like, thank you. Like, I just want French fries. Like, but you see two different, which one's more real? I would probably say the latter. We see, right, and as Rogan said to Sanjay, he goes, do you understand the importance of what I'm saying, though? He goes, when CNN lies about a comedian taking horse dewormer, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? So if they're going to lie about these little things, right, and then you go there and you see with your own eye, I look at the news and they say safe and effective, Fauci's our friend, and then I'm like, but you're shadow banning the inventor of the mRNA. Like, something isn't adding up. And I have them on here, and then I show it to other people, and they're like, but the news, and I'm like, which one? They're like, I read this article about Malone, and I'm like, here's my interview with him. Here's my 2-hour interview with him. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? So again, someone could come to you and go, Mitzi, I heard this about Tommy. You can go, here's my podcast with Tommy. As a matter of fact, here's his phone number. You can go on too. So what you saw with your own eyes, you didn't see the, right? It's like there are videos from North Korea where people will film their tours and they bring them to grocery stores that are like mock stores. They're full of stuff. And you can see, and they have the guides. And the guides tell these stories about how North Korea defeated the U.S. in 1950, how they drove us out of Vietnam. And it's like, what are you talking about? Versus, we see what's in China. I could see what's in a Chinese tour, versus you go there and you see a guy who's in real estate, who's in coal. So this whole kind of rambling thing I'm going on is, they appear as the real tiger, but as you saw with your own eyes, as I'm sure some wealthy guys from America visited Nazi Germany in 44 and came back and said, guys, it's not a monolith. I think what you're saying, or what your experiences imply is kind of what we're saying about Nazi Germany. We see the monolithic China, the rising China rising, like the red wall. What you
But I feel
saw
as
is
if
the facade.
I've seen the Ponzi scheme.
You saw what it actually is. You saw the
Oh,
puppets
okay,
behind it.
all right. I don't want to claim more expertise than.
No, who cares? Let's speculate wildly.
Well, I mean, no, I want to be as straightforward and
Yeah.
transparent as I can. I have no academic knowledge of what I'm describing, but I will describe that there was not a single village that I saw, and it's approaching a couple of 100 days total that I spent in China. That the empty buildings and empty investments, bridges to nowhere, were everywhere, and
Mhm.
this this is kind of personally fascinating to me about um, how people see things through different eyes, because it hit home to me, all the empty buildings I was seeing. But interestingly, except for the niece who was in real estate, the other members of the family, they weren't seeing the empty buildings. Like at the end of the day, we're having dinner and it's wonderful, and I love every one of them dearly, but we discuss what we've seen. And one of them, she was just fascinated by the amount of solar lights that there were. Another one was looking at some of the ancient art forms, and just looking at it through the eyes of an artist. Except for the real estate
The real
niece,
estate guy saw. Okay.
none of them saw what I was seeing, which is unimaginable numbers of empty buildings. It was, to me, the most fascinating thing to see that reality's all around us, but we pick out what we choose to see.
Okay.
I remember just being totally blown away that to me, the most salient thing that I saw. I loved what I saw. There were historic things, and I
Sure.
hope I got a lot more in addition to seeing empty buildings. But the thing that jumped out at me most comes from my background of counting the house, seeing making a guess of occupancy rates.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you have no background, if you have a different background from mine in the hotel business, or possibly if you're in the restaurant business, or even in the entertainment business where you also count the house, but if you don't have that background, maybe you don't even see it. But I remember coming back and describing to people that, even back from 2007 on, describing this just spectacular amount of, figuratively speaking, roads to nowhere, investments, malinvestments that would never, ever, ever, ever pay off. It didn't seem to resonate with anybody. They just, it didn't sink in, it didn't land.
No, you're right. It's what do you see? Is it rising China? Do you see what for a long time I felt like I've seen is, oh no, here comes this monster, versus what's behind, like what is behind the mask? Like, are these empty buildings? Like you said, tofu cement, and then there's the other, right, Chinese steel. It's like, well, they put out more steel than anyone else in the world. Yeah, but there's a reason it has a name, and it's had a name since before I was born, Chinesium. And it's because everyone knows what that steel is. It's the steel that breaks immediately, right? It's so you have to wonder, is it just this huge, and which is why Gordon Chang says, on one side, it's very good that it's a paper tiger, or a paper dragon.
But he also says it's maximum.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is it's very dangerous, right? Germany towards the end, they didn't have a nuclear bomb. Had they had a nuclear bomb, that facade that was crumbling would have been so dangerous if all of a sudden they lash out, right? Which is why the Soviet Union crumbling. No, you saw these little things, but for the most part, it was this monolith. It's the Soviets, it's the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and then all of a sudden it collapses, and it's like, well, how'd that happen? And it's, well, it was happening for a long time. The difference with them and Germany is they had 30,000 nuclear weapons. So whereas China, it's like, oh, cool, they're not actually this terrible power that's going to take over the world. They're falling apart. Yeah, they're falling apart, and there are a lot of guys in there probably feathering their nest, getting their, hey, here's my hard drive of all the Uyghur concentration camp tortures, right? Which it's already kind of coming out. They're talking about how they hung men from the ceiling and then would rape them. They would rape them as they're hanging from the ceiling just for being Uyghurs. I'm sure there are a lot of guys getting their hard drives and going, this is my here's my immunity, here's my trip to America. But much like Nazi Germany, there were also a lot of guys that were hardliners, stayed in the bunker till the end, right? Was it Goering or Gerb? No, who was the guy? He and his wife, they were up there until the night before Hitler committed suicide, and they gave their 6 kids cyanide while they were sleeping.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
was it Goering, Himmler, Bormann?
I totally know who you mean.
Yeah,
and
I can't think of the name for the life of me.
Yeah, and I even remember the wife saying it's so hard because
Yeah, his wife's
they
name
had
was,
6 children.
his wife's name was Magda.
Yeah,
Himmler, Goring,
I don't think it was any of them.
Goering, Bormann. They're all
right. I'll make a bet. As soon as we're not trying to think of who it was, because we both know who it was, it'll come to us.
It'll come up. Yeah. Either way, I mean, the more important thing is that good, they're nameless. They disappear into history because they're Nazis. But the point is there are some hardliners, right? There were Japanese were a little more ideological, but the ideological Nazis, they stayed in there till the end and committed suicide. The ideological Japanese, they committed suicide. I'm sure if they had nuclear weapons, that's when they would have pressed the button. There's a lot that feather the nest and go, here's the hard drive. Here's my immunity. I'll, let me go free and I'll spill the beans. If they had nuclear weapons, do they go out, or do the ideological ones go, I was going to shoot myself, but now I'm going to launch a nuke? That is what Gordon Chang is concerned about with China is, they're falling apart. That's good. And that's really bad. Are they gonna? Yeah, because their ideology is that they aren't the less powerful nation in the world and they have to overcome America. What it is, but what their big view is that they are temporarily not the number one power, that they have had a small moment in their history where America has, they've taken first place, but they are the true heirs to the throne, much like Japan and Nazi Germany. It's not just that they want land and power. They truly believe they are the master race. The difference between Japan and Germany and China is China has nuclear weapons. And that is the danger.
But let me,
go.
Well, since we're on their weaknesses, I want to share a conversation that I had. This was at a dinner party in China, and it didn't involve my host or his family, but it did involve other people. And there was a woman who spoke to me with just, in almost crazy frankness, why she would dare talk to me about what I'm about to describe. I can't fathom, but here's what she said. She said, it was on the subject of corruption. And she said that if she wanted her kid to get into a good school, she had to pay. If she went into a hospital and wanted a doctor to cut the right place rather than the wrong place, she had to pay. She said I can't swear that this is true, but I would swear in court that I was told this. She said the amount of corruption for any possible part of life in China was omnipresent, that you didn't get anywhere without bribes or favors. But that makes me think, isn't that like one of your guests, Claire
Lopez?
Yeah, who was it who talked with you about Wanshi?
David O'Neill, my buddy David.
O'Neill.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, I have no academic knowledge. I can only report I've lived it experience. And I'm going to put academic knowledge way above my one small experience, but nevertheless, I did have a woman in China complain bitterly that every single thing that she did, hospitals, education, jobs, everything was based on paying people off.
Mm-hmm.
I let me not leave out a big part. That if you have a legal case, you pay people off. Either that or you call in your relatives who are more powerful than the person who's suing you.
Yeah, it's again, so you look at that and then you look at like here and we're like, we don't do that. One thing I always think of is what Claire said. I have to go to the restroom in a second, so I'm going to let you take over. But it's one thing Claire said is she was like, um, I asked her, I was like, is it inevitable that a totalitarian dictatorship takes over? Is that like, like animals that go through natural selection, they always become the most ruthless, right? They have the hardest exoskeleton, the biggest fangs. And she said no. And because like what we're talking about now, you have to pay off everyone versus you come to the United States. And it's like, no, there's laws against that. There's this gradient of people always want to come here. And so you cannot create a dictatorship where people are always trying to leave because eventually they get out and they go somewhere else. And that is our upper hand. Yes, we have the military, which is the true upper hand. What we also have is people come here. And although there's a bunch of ungrateful fucking communists in my generation who think that we're the worst place in the world. I look at my friend Ivan who grew up in an apartment block in Bulgaria, right? Who's a professional bodybuilder who started coming to the US in 2011, just became a citizen in like the last 6 months. Shout out Ivan. He's a professional bodybuilder, lives in Las Vegas, and he's making money hand over fist right now. He's the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's like 6'4". He looks like he's a robot. He's insane. My buddy Prince Blackosh, who came from Kosovo, and he grew up during the Serbian War. His dad was a journalist, and his dad was covering war crimes. And the Serbians broke both his arms and legs and threw him on their front lawn as a sign. His dad survived. But Prince grew up, Princ, Prince Blackosh. He grew up seeing that. And he came, and I remember he was working at the same apartment complex I was in Ocean City, summer 2014. We were both doing security. And he would be working like, I'm not even kidding you, like 12-hour shifts and then another 12-hour shift next door after that. He would be working like 30 hours in a row. And every once in a while, my parents were like, Tom, have Prince come over. So he'd come over for dinner. And Prince was like, he was having me take pictures of him in front of our house, a nice house. But he was taking pictures of like the 2 cars in the driveway and sending it to all of his family. He was like, 2 cars, 2 cars. I remember he took a picture of the open refrigerator and said, like, full, it's full. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember we all kind of got this dose. And Prince eventually moved to the United States. And now he's a physical therapist living in like Manhattan. The point is these people that grow up in these other areas, they always come here. And to me, that's the biggest telltale sign of like, it can appear to be a monolith, but the reality is people leave there to come here. And that's my hope. I also think they're a paper paper.
And by the way, I know that you have to leave, but we have to wind up. But I have.
No, I don't have to finish. I just have to go to the bathroom.
No, but I have to wind up.
Oh, you have to wind up. Oh,
yeah, we've been on for an hour, and guess what?
We haven't touched on the book.
Yeah, I have a new book coming out, and we didn't say one word about it. Okay, would you invite me back and we'll talk about it?
Absolutely. That's what for everyone listening, that's what this podcast was scheduled to be. And well, we both went down a rabbit hole of Chinese construction and
but I sure loved it because
that was great.
Yeah, I mean it's an important topic.
Yeah.
What are we up against?
Yeah.
And by the way, I love Gordon Chang.
Oh yeah. No, he's going to come on again. I think he's busy nonstop. I think he's going to come on again in January. So if I play my cards right, I'll get him back on. And I'm trying to get Spalding back on. But yeah, I certainly don't feel as like hopeless as I did like 6 months ago and like right after the election. It kind of seemed as like, oh, it's over. Now I'm kind of looking at it as like we're in a rough spot, like, no doubt about it. But I don't have like the doom and gloom feeling I did even 6 months ago. Now it seems like
let's go Brandon.
Yeah, let's go Brandon. It kind of seems like some rays of sun are starting to punch through the clouds, and you're like, oh wait, it's a cloudy day. When you get on a plane and you go above the clouds and you go, oh, it's sunny up here. It just feels rainy. I feel like it just feels rainy right now. But if we just hold out, it's gonna, the facade of the illusion, the monolith of the clouds, it's gonna break away and it's gonna be sunlight. That's how I feel. but we just have to stick with it. And we have to keep doing what we're doing, and it's talking about it. And real quick, I mean, Steven Crowder, right? 5 million subscribers on YouTube, just got another strike yesterday for talking about a guy who identified as a female going into the women's bathroom at high school or an elementary school.
Yes, and raping a 16-year-old girl. And her father is ticked.
Well, Steven Crowder talked about it, and he's suspended from YouTube for a week for talking about it because, quote, it's promoting hate about the trans community. But it's a grown man identifying as a woman raping a child in a bathroom at school. He just got banned for a week from that. Don't interrupt your enemy while they're making YouTube
has ticked off 5 million subscribers.
And so now he's on Rumble going about it, and he's pulling more people over to Rumble. It's only a matter of time. It's the tide is slowly. All we can do is continue to talk about it, because it used to be you had to argue about stances and policies and tax plans. Now they're kind of handing us a really easy battle. Now we don't even have to argue. This is what I think about immigration, and this is what I think about. Now it's just the free speech party and the not free speech. They've handed you a very easy argument, right? If you're courting a girl and he's a lawyer, but I'm a doctor, it's very easy when the other guy then becomes a convicted murderer, and you're like, murderer or not murderer. You are making this very easy for us. They're slowly serving it up on a platter to go, who's free speech, who's not. I'd say don't interrupt them while they're making a mistake. It's going to take a while, probably going to take another couple of years. Today's Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. I think if we keep needling away at it, it's going to work.
I think Dave Chappelle is going to have a big influence.
I think it's
because he dares to stand up.
I think it's all we're seeing pieces. Tim Dillon, Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, Steven Crowder, Glenn Greenwald, the gay liberal journalist who broke the Ed Snowden story, is now being called a far-right conspiracy theorist.
The revolution eats its own.
It's exactly. So I think we're seeing, in hindsight, years and decades from now, we'll look back and go, how did they not see this coming? Of course it was falling apart. I think that's where we are right now, where it's still the fog of war. It seems to be an inevitable. And not only that, the news isn't going to report on it. Just like Nazi Germany didn't report on, hey, a lot of the top leaders are burying blueprints. They don't report on it. So, the revolution will not be televised. No one's going to report on the mass exodus to Rumble. No one's going to report on, growing discontent with censorship, because they're going to censor the story on censorship. Keep pushing, and it will. It's my favorite analogy, and then I'll wrap it up. I know I got to let you go. It's my favorite analogy about Ray Kurzweil talks about with technological change, but it applies to everything. It applies to the Soviet Union. It applies to, I think, what we're seeing right now. A lot of the biggest things we see in our lives, right? It's like that Lenin quote, there are decades where nothing happens, then there are weeks where decades happen. It's kind of like that. A tsunami, right? When two tectonic plates move and push up a bunch of water, a tsunami for its whole lifespan, let's say the lifespan is 10 hours, just a clean 10 number, 10 hours. Take that lifespan, you can then extrapolate that to the age of a society, maybe 1,000 years, or age of a human, 100 years, whatever. You take that, 99.9% of its lifespan is just this bump in the water. It's not even breaking waves. It's just a mound moving that really you can only see from space and with buoys. It's just this kind of, you don't even see, it just looks like the horizon. You can't even tell it's higher. It's just the horizon. It's not until the last 0.1% of its lifespan that it crashes onto the shore and makes global news, kills 500,000 people, and irreparably changes society, and geographically changes the landscape. Whatever's happening right now, it's silently moving. It's just this mass. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of a wave here. Steven Crowder, Joe Rogan, talking about Wuhan on nightly shows. There's this wall coming, and when it crashes, we'll all go, well, of course. But right now, we can't see it coming. But if you really put your ear to the ground, you can kind of hear it coming. Does that make sense?
I love your analogy. It makes sense to me, and I'm going to buy into it.
Beautiful. I will let you go. I've kept you 10 minutes longer than I said I would. And I'll text you right after this, or I got to go do some stuff, but I'll text you today and we'll set up an episode and we'll do what we meant to do today.
Perfect. Hey,
Beautiful.
thanks.
Mitzi
All right.
Perdue, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on here. Stay safe, everybody. God bless. God bless America.